as its title on screen is Wicked Part 1, is a film adaptation to the highly successful, highly acclaimed Broadway musical Wicked that serves as a prequel / origin story to The Wizard of Oz, namely The Wicked Witch of the West. And basically the gist of this movie shows how Elphaba, who became the Wicked Witch of the West, and Galinda, or who we eventually knew as Glinda, who becomes the Good Witch of the North, I believe that's who she was, how they met, how they started off as rivals and then became friends, and what led them down their path to becoming what we know them as today. This was not a movie that I had a lot of interest in. This was not a movie I was particularly anticipating. I mean, I saw the trailers for it, I saw the cast. It didn't really excite me. It just didn't really seem like a movie for me. I'll let you know right now, if you're new to my channel, I'm not a fan of musicals. It's probably my least favorite movie genre. I've always found musicals to be cheesy, kind of just ridiculous. It's just not for me. I understand they have their audience, and if you love them, that's cool. It's never been for me. But like most people, I did grow up with The Wizard of Oz. I mean, frankly, if you didn't grow up with The Wizard of Oz, I'm sorry your parents didn't love you. But even with that, it had been a really, really long time since I had ever seen that movie. I hadn't watched it since childhood, frankly. And so as a result, it's just not a movie that seemed like I needed to go see, referring to Wicked I am. But, you know, it was getting a lot of hype. Everyone out there was making a big deal of how that and Gladiator 2 were getting released on the same weekend. It was basically like this year's Barbenheimer, if you will. So yeah, I decided to go and check it out and see for myself. And to my pleasant surprise, it's actually a pretty damn good musical. Okay, so credit where the movie is due. I really want to give a shout out to the two leads in this movie. Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, both were fantastic in this movie. I thought both these ladies captured the characters really, really well. I mean, Cynthia Erivo, I really liked what she brought to Elphaba. I mean, she shows up at Shiz University. She's going off to college. She doesn't really fit in there. She's not really even supposed to be there. You know, she's green, so she's seen as an outsider. I did find that part a little weird. I mean, at this university, there are animals that can talk, but her being green, that's the line in the sand. That's too much. But yeah, it's made her shy. It's made her feel different, made her feel like an outsider. And above that, she has this extreme magical gift to herself, which you would think would make her more interesting to the other students. It certainly makes her more interesting to the faculty that's there. But at the same time, I do like how the movie acknowledges that the fact that she is, you know, she looks different and she's so talented, she's so gifted, it kind of just makes her even more of an outsider. That's kind of what it is in the social life a lot. Like, the people who are really gifted and immensely talented, people don't necessarily want to be friends with them because they envy them. Because that's ultimately what kicks off the rivalry between her and Galinda, who, by the way, Ariana Grande crushes it at that. Because Ariana Grande portrays Galinda in like that, you know, rich, spoiled, popular girl who just gets whatever she wants, and whenever she doesn't, she's just like shocking by it. She's kind of been used to having things handed to her in life, so the second she's not handed something, she's gonna have to work for something a little bit. She doesn't really know how to adapt to that. Definitely makes for a very interesting dynamic between the two of them, and it leads to what you believe to be a clear rivalry in the beginning, because they couldn't be more different of human beings. But the movie does a really good job at building these characters up and making them more complex than they appear. Like, initially, when you meet Glinda and she's this stuck-up rich hot girl and everything like that, initially you kind of think she's a bitch, you're kind of rooting against her, but you know there's a little bit more to her than that. And as the movie goes along, you really do see she has a good heart inside. And even with Elphaba, they really make her kind of a tragic character as it goes along. You kind of see, definitely by the end, just how she's projected to fall upon this path that's gonna lead her to this wickedness. The movie does a really good job of portraying her as this really tragic character. So by the end, when you see this friendship really build up between these two characters, but you know how it's gonna unfold, you know, in some ways, it's heartbreaking, but I love that the movie was able to make it such that they build up this friendship between the two of them, that you were able to feel that by the end. I know some people out there might say like, oh, you know, taking a popular villain and humanizing them and making you understand them and everything, we've seen that a million times before. It's like, well, yeah, you have, but I mean, Wicked, the Broadway musical, was kind of the first thing that ever did that. So yeah, if a live-action adaptation is going to follow that storyline, it's kind of in its right to, because, you know, the play was the first thing to ever do that. And yeah, how are the musical numbers in this movie? Some are good, some don't really stick with me. There's one in particular, I mean, you probably already know what it is, but there's one in particular that I'm like, okay, this one was great. That's kind of my golden rule with a musical right there. You gotta give me at least one song, one musical number that had me walking out like, okay, that one was awesome. And this movie did that. But the really big thing that I need to give this movie credit for when it comes to musicals, because this is what a lot of other musical movies really fail at, they actually casted people who can fucking sing. I'm not just Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, both of whom are spectacular singers. I mean, Ariana Grande, I remember her on Nickelodeon back in the day, but I really feel like she, teetered more towards her music career because of how gifted a singer she was. But no, the movie found these two actresses who can both crush it at singing and were like, you two need to be our leads for a film adaptation of Wicked, because it just makes sense. But not even just the two of them. A lot of the people that are in this movie, like Jonathan Bailey is a great example. He's another star in this movie. He plays, I don't really know who he is. I mean, I don't know much about this, world or much about these characters or anything like that, but he plays this sort of like, Prince Charming-ish sort of character, shows up, everybody loves him, everybody wants to know him, he kind of finds himself drawn a little bit more towards Elphaba, which is interesting. But yeah, Jonathan Bailey was great in here, and I know Jonathan Bailey has some experience in Broadway. He has a really good singing voice, which made his performance really stand out. But not even just him. A lot of the people that are in this movie, a lot of the actors, are namely Broadway stars. So these are people who are just born to sing, born to act on stage, born to be in a movie like this, and it just makes sense. The problem I have with so many musicals that get made today is they just find all the A-list actors that are out there, they stick them in a movie, and they're just like, all right, take singing lessons for a few months, then come and do this movie, and then poof, it's gonna be a musical. And the reality is, a lot of A-list actors in this world, no matter how much training you give them, are not going to sound particularly good. I tell people all the time that's why I don't like the movie Les Miserables, because 90% of that cast can't fucking sing. Especially with the fact that movie is like 99% sung. It just, look, if you like that movie again, fine. That movie made me want to kill myself. I couldn't take all the singing, all the mediocre singing at that. This movie though, not the case. They casted people who can sing, I appreciate that. They don't do it necessarily with everybody. I mean, some people in this movie, Jeff Goldblum, Michelle Yeoh, they're cast in this movie and they get a musical number here or there. And when they sing, compared to everybody else, you're just like, okay, yeah, these are the actors that were just put in here because they have the name or they have the look or they fit the character, but they can't particularly sing all that great. But they weren't like the stars of the movie, so you can kind of get away with them, being less competent singers as the main stars. But beyond even that though, where I really need to give Wicked just so much credit is how much it sucks you into its world. I mean, the world building here in Oz is fantastic. It really does. It brings out that nostalgia for you if you grew up with The Wizard of Oz, which I imagine anyone who's seen this movie has. I mean, it really does a great job of bringing out that nostalgia from The Wizard of Oz. I mean, you watch this movie and you look back on things from The Wizard of Oz, be like, yep, I remember that, I remember that. Oh, it's cool to see this with modern day technology and everything that goes with it. I mean, everything popped, everything looked vibrant. It really looked like a world that I was just brought into. Like, it's one thing to make a movie with a very unique world or setting or whatever it might be, but it's another thing to make you feel like you were a part of it. And this movie very much does that. It had a very Harry Potter vibe to it. Like, being in that magical world that's Harry Potter, you kind of feel like you're in another magical world here. I mean, hell, even to my surprise, the fact that the movie's 2 hours and 40 minutes long, it didn't feel that long. It really did, surprisingly, execute its time very well. As far as some flaws with the movie go, I mean, I will say, this being a musical, it's very much a musical. Not every song in the movie does hit with me. Some were just a little too campy or cheesy or just over the top for me, and that's just what I'll say right now. If you're not a big fan of musicals, you won't walk out of this feeling like it's the movie event of the year. And as much as I did enjoy this movie, I can't quite go that far with it. Like, you know what it is? In a lot of ways, I would compare this to the Avengers Infinity War for musical fans. Like, this is an event you have been looking forward to for a very, very long time. I mean, when I went to the movie theaters, it was packed. People were having a good time. It was clearly filled with a lot of people who adore Wicked, who love musicals, who have seen the play. And for those people, this is that big event that you've been waiting for a long time. You pack the theaters, you go with everybody. When certain moments or scenes or characters appear, you get hyped as hell for it. And meanwhile, people who maybe attended to see Avengers Infinity War, who weren't really as in tune with that, will be like people like me who went to go see Wicked. You're gonna walk in, and it's not gonna mean as much to you, but you will still appreciate the grand scale of it and the scope of it and the ambition, and you'll still feel to yourself, yeah, I can see why people love this so much, and it is undeniably an extremely well-made movie. But for me, what really wins me over with this movie, what really brought it home for me, was the final act of this movie. In the final act of this movie, that's when everything starts to come together a little bit more. It really starts to tie in more to The Wizard of Oz. You see exactly where it's going. You have an idea where it's going. And it ends on a cliffhanger, and from what I've told, it ends exactly where the intermission happens in the actual play. And I'm not even gonna lie to you guys, I am legitimately excited to see what they do in part two. From what I've heard from people, from what I've heard since, seeing this movie, it sounds like it's actually leaning towards something that could actually be really awesome. And as a result of that, you would have this two-part Wicked movie that could be fantastic. So as a result, that's one thing that I do have to say with this movie. It is undeniably a lot of setup, but it is part one, so undeniably it's gonna feel like setup. It has a little bit like that Dune part one vibe. It's like, it's introducing you to all these characters, it's introducing you to the world, but it's leading to something, and you can't help but feel excited about it. And that's a great compliment I can give this movie. So all in all, can't believe I'm saying this, I surprisingly had a great time with Wicked. The cast across the board do fantastic. The chemistry between them is great, namely between the two leads. I thought they both crushed it. The singing almost across the board is excellent. Some of the songs are good, one of which in fact is excellent. You probably know which one I'm talking about, but yeah, what can I say? I thought that was great. The world building was excellent. It completely sucks you into the land of Oz once again. It gives you that nostalgic feeling from the Wizard of Oz. The movie has a strong level of emotion. I love seeing the story of, rivalries turn friends that will in all likelihood turn to mortal enemies. Also, the movie's surprisingly a lot funnier than I thought it was going to be. There were legitimate moments. I actually laughed out loud from this movie. I wasn't expecting that, so yeah. Good for you, movie. You make me laugh, you're gonna get some points. It does undeniably feel like setup. It definitely feels a little bit like half of one movie, but I am excited to see where it goes next. And in the end, that's what I'll say right now. If you're a musical fan, if you're a Wicked fan, this is gonna be your holy grail. This will be the movie event of the century for you. But even if you're not a musical fan and you have people in your life, you have family, you have friends who wanna see it and are trying to get you to go with them, I'm gonna tell you this right now. You might find yourself surprisingly enjoying it a lot more than you think. That was the case with me anyway. This movie's gonna make $1 billion without blinking, and you know what? Part two probably will as well, because I already know this. I plan on checking it out. I want to see where they go next. So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video, and as always, don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe. I will see you all next time.